no choice but to say either we say it's wrong because we're borrowing from the Christian worldview, or because my feelings are hurt. Those are the only two choices that they have.
So when Steve comes back, he's got a little surprise waiting for him. You see who's in the room back home?
Oh my God. He's always ragging on me about my wife.
Okay, I'm gonna mute. Do your thing, man.
Okay, I'm back.
But Steve, all right. Well, I don't know if
No. Back up. Let Didi do his thing. Go ahead, Didi.
Okay, I gotta step away.
Sure.
So do you have a justification that there are causal connections between some events?
Steve, you have to unmute.
I have.
Hi. I'm back. Can you guys hear me okay?
Can you answer the question?
Yeah.
I just want to know, can I answer this question, but am I allowed to do anything else, or am I just this person who is being interrogated?
I'm asking you, I am not interrogating you. I am asking you a simple question. Now, I've been very basically polite to you here so far, and you have been entirely evasive. Now, I'll ask the question again. Do you, as an atheist in your worldview, do you have a philosophical justification for the principle of causality, or that there are causal connections between some events?
I do not have a philosophical structure that would satisfy you.
Do you have any justification that there are causal connections between events?
Yes. I've given to several times, and you do hand waving and say it's circular when it clearly isn't.
Okay, Steve, either you do not understand what I said, or you're just being a sophist and being disingenuous. Now, I've explained to you already that the concept of...
Darwin's deity. Don't ask him this question again. You don't know.
Okay. All right. Now, Steve, the concept of evidence presupposes causality. Invoking evidence is not a justification because you're presupposing the very thing that you're attempting to prove. Circularity is where the conclusion is hidden in one or more of the premises of what you're attempting to prove. Okay, so if you invoke evidence as a part of your premises to justify the conclusion that there is causality, if within those premises, such as evidence, contains the idea, either openly or covertly, of causal connections, it's circular reasoning. Steve, either you simply profoundly do not understand these basic concepts in the philosophy of science, or you're simply being diversionary. I'll tell you one more time. What I am telling you is completely uncontroversial within the domain of the philosophy of science. Evidence as a meaningful concept presupposes that there are some causal connections between events. Because if evidence does... Okay, Phoenix, you do not know what you're talking about. Now, evidence as okay, all right, Phoenix, let me explain something to you. If you remove the concept, knowingly or even unknowingly, from evidence, if you remove the idea that there are causal connections, it completely eviscerates the meaning of evidence. So if you say that the poop on the lawn is evidence of a dog defecated, okay? If you remove the concept of causal connections, then you cannot say the poop is evidence of the dog, because there would be no causal connections. Now, Phoenix, what I have just said and what I've explained several times over is completely an uncontroversial concept, and it would be accepted by even atheists who are professors of the basics of the philosophy of science. So objecting to it, objecting to what the non-controversial statement that I made, makes you look very foolish.
Famously, Russell said the following: "The law of causality, I believe, like much that passes muster among philosophers, is a relic of a bygone age, surviving like the monarchy only because it is erroneously supposed to do no harm." So Russell thought not only can the notion of cause not play a role in physics, but because it can play a role in the sciences or in physics, it should be generally expunged from the philosophical vocabulary. Russell's arguments have found quite a number of defenders recently, and I have a list here of recent neo-Russellians who agree with Russell, by and large, that causation cannot play a role in physics, or at least doesn't sit well with certain features of physics.
The fact that you and I are here talking to each other, it doesn't just suggest, but proves that causal connections exist.
No, it does not. What it comports with is the Christian worldview, where the Christian God has created a world where there are causal connections.
It seems that God could not have created anything without causation. God couldn't have created causation because he would have needed causation to exist in order to have done so. Create is a causal notion, as we saw when we looked at the social construction issue. So there must be causation for God to create anything. It follows that he cannot create causation itself.
Even if God created causal powers in the universe, there are some causal powers he can't create, namely his own. So both atheists and theists can agree that there are some uncreated causal powers. In that case, what reason does the atheist have to not think it's the universe that has those uncreated causal powers?
I'm well studied in the philosophy of science. The bottom line is this. You see, you want to talk about logic, Steve. Hey, Steve, let me ask you a simple question before you go. Tonight, you've been employing logic. Are there universal absolute laws of logic, Steve?
Apparently, I'm not an expert. There are things like the laws of the excluded middle and that sort of thing, but I'm not.
Do they exist absolutely and universally, Steve?
All right.
I don't know.
If you don't know, then how can you claim to be logical?
He doesn't know anything for certain. He already made that.
If you don't know that there are logical laws, then how can you claim to be rational when rationality depends on universal logical absolutes, Steve?
I get other people involved.
If you own a dog,
guys, I get other people involved.
Rationally find where buried a bone without knowing anything about logic.
Steve, the fact that something happens with a dog, the fact that it happens does not logically.
I think Dee actually got the better of you, Steve. I appreciate both of you coming for today, but I can't do this no more. I just can't do it no more. No, that's it. All right. I'm going to be accused of muting and booting, and I just can't do it no more. Okay. Steve doesn't understand reality. I understand. I get that. There's no point being made. So we're moving on.